If you're going to go buy a franchise, even if you've worked in a franchise organization, you're going to need to ask the right questions. And asking the right questions is the most critical part of the process. Validation is, and I think most consultants would agree, validation is the most critical part of the process. But validation done right. You're not going to let the brand dictate who you're going to talk to. Because then they're going to skew it in their direction. So when I represent a candidate, it's my job to make sure they're getting clarity on what they're buying. And if I'm getting only one side of the story, they're not going to get clarity on what they're buying. So I need to make sure that they're asking all the right questions to the right people. And that's how you get the information. All this money that goes into franchising and franchise consulting and franchise sales, it's not really, there's been nothing built to really help the consumer that I know of. It's like this secret society of people that don't want to tell you that most of what they do is bullshit. And and I hope it's okay if I use that term. It's the truth. They're not being wholly honest about it. They want to sell you franchise businesses. That's the name of the game. Closing is the name of the game, and selling is the name of the game. And it doesn't matter if you sell a franchise to somebody and they fail, because it's not any of your business after that. And so that to me is wrong. That to me is not the way that I could ever run my life.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Reframe First. I'm Oleksij, and let me welcome our today's guest, Matt Solomon from 258 Motivate. Hey Matt, great having you here.
How's it going? Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for joining. So, from what I learned, you've been working in all the places of franchise industry. So you started from big corporate, then you were a consultant. You also owned few franchises. You've been a franchisee. And so nowadays you run your own business at 258 Motivate, where you consult other people. So could you tell us more about your journey, how you got into this business and what you do?
Yeah, I didn't choose it, like a lot of people in their careers. But yeah, it really all started when I worked in advertising, as a young advertising executive. And I found myself working for Panda Restaurant Group, which isn't a franchise, but it's a huge organization. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but I worked for many moons on the corporate side in the marketing department as an executive, on both the franchise sales and the consumer marketing side, for some really big brands and some really small ones. So I got to see kind of the inside and out of what a franchise organization looks like, how sales are done, but then also what are the franchise needs? What do franchisees need from a marketing department and a corporate office? And what are kind of the arguments that go back and forth on that consistently? And then after I left corporate America, I became a franchise consultant with FranChoice, and was there for a short period of time and moved away from that to start my own outfit called 258 Motivate. And so we do a combination of both franchise consulting and marketing programs for franchisees. So it's kind of fun because once I consult someone and they buy a brand, I'm able to also help them drive business to that brand in the first year, which is always the hardest. So it kind of combines all of my skills into one, but it's nice because oftentimes in franchising, the franchise salesperson sells the franchise and then doesn't do anything else post-franchise sales. So they're not really attached to the outcomes per se. So yeah, so it's been a really great ride. I've had some amazing clients and loved working with all the people I worked with. It's a really fun environment. And yeah, that's kind of how I got to where I am now. Oh, and I own 2 franchises. You mentioned that. Yeah, I'm the operator. So it's, I know what it's like to be in the trenches also. So I'm the managing partner of 2 franchise organizations. And it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. So everything in franchising I've done, and I love talking about it. So.
Yeah, so you indeed were on all the sides of the franchise business.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start, but maybe from the franchise itself. What does it take to own a franchise, and what does it take to find the proper franchisees for your franchise?
Great question. That's a great first question because obviously the answer to the very first question typically is you need some capital, right? You need to have some money to buy a franchise, and I think that's I've worked with all kinds of people who have lots of money to invest, and they're looking to kind of extend their portfolio out into franchising, and then I've worked with people who literally have home equity and that's it, and so it's possible to buy a franchise without a lot of money, but it makes it a lot harder. And so I think that's the first thing people need to understand is you need to have a little bit of money to invest, not only just to buy the
Hmm.
franchise, because probably the cheapest franchise for sales somewhere around $100,000. Um, and then you need that first year's budget for, marketing and overhead expenses. And so you've got to make sure you've got a little bit of capital. So that's number one. Number two is you've got to be open to some risk. And, when I say open to some risk, it's a lot of risk. It's a lot of risk. You're going to take a lot of risk. Like anything in life, right? People say that all the time. Everything is risky, but this carries a little bit different weight because you know that the work that you put into this is going to be whatever the outcome is. And so you're in charge, you're responsible, so to speak. So the third thing I'd say, besides money, being kind of not averse to risk, would be you've got to be able to dig really deep. You've got to be able to do the work. There is no passive business in franchising. I believe that there was, and I talked about it when I was selling franchise businesses before. In my own business now, and our philosophy is that there is no passive investment. You're going to be involved, and it just depends on how much you're going to be involved. And so that's the big question I ask a lot of my candidates is, how involved in this business do you want to be? Because you can hire people to do some of the work, but you're going to have to be involved. There just is no way to be 100% passive. I've seen it work a few times, but typically it just doesn't work. So I think just being prepared to work, I think it's interesting. A lot of people retire and then buy a franchise. And I think it should be the other way around. I think people should invest early in franchising,
Hmm.
and then retire and sell their businesses or run it while they're working in a corporate environment if they're going to be 50% in. But I would never recommend somebody to retire and then take this on, because you're not retiring. You're you're in it. And so and don't let anybody lie to you either. It's there is no passive investment in franchising. You're going to be involved. So yeah. So those three things are really important. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
How much do you usually have to be involved? Like, and which segments of the franchise industry require like more involvement, which require less involvement? How does it work?
Well, it's interesting. When I talk to a candidate about their skill set, I want them to be very honest with me about what they're good at,
Mhm.
because typically, and this is true for me in my first franchise purchase, when I bought my franchise, I looked at every level of executive leadership from the top all the way, from marketing to accounting, to have a really good understanding of what the franchise was good at and what I was good at, and to compare those skill sets. Because if they're really great at marketing, well, that's something I'm good at too. So is that something that I need support in? Not necessarily, right? Um, is the brand so powerful that it's not something I could have ever thought about in my head? There's no way this differentiator would have been thought up by me. Then that's another area that you have to kind of consider. So I think to answer your question, um, the things that you're not good at are the things that you want the franchise to be really good at, right? So, and the things that you're awesome at, you don't have to worry as much about the franchise being good at that, because you're not going to need that support. So for me, it's marketing. If they're not good at marketing, I can do that myself. So it really depends on the person. That's that to answer your question. I think the toughest parts for everybody is IT and technology, unless you come from that background, because that's a skill set that most people don't naturally have, right? You can learn some marketing, you can learn some accounting, and you can learn some IT, but if you're not comfortable with technology and the evolution of technology and where it's going, and you're not comfortable leaning into it, you're not going to get any help from the franchise. You have to know that stuff on your own. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind. And that's what I see a lot of brands not focused on differentiation, not focused on technology. Their franchisees then fall further behind, and before you know it, they're no longer a viable brand. So Yeah.
How do you know, how, how do you identify if the brand is good in marketing, whatever, like if the franchise is good in certain field?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we do a thing called validation, which, the way that we do it at 258 Motivate is much different than the way that most consultants provide validation for their. So, yeah. So, validation is a period of time when you get to ask the franchise questions, right? As many questions as you can. Typically, what they do is they provide you the franchisees that you're going to ask those questions to, which is a little
Mhm.
which is a little bit interesting because they're going to provide you with their best franchisees. You're going to talk to those people that are the cheerleaders for the brand. The way that we do it at 258 Motivate is we kind of circumvent that whole thing. We find franchisees that are close to the territory that you're going to buy, and we make sure that we set up those meetings. And so you get to ask a lot of questions. And one of the questions you're going to ask them is, how is the marketing support? Right? How is the marketing support? Tell us about your last campaign. How did it do? How much traffic did it drive? Did you get an ROI document on the money that you invested in that campaign? And so asking the right questions is really critical. That's why using a consultant is really important, because if you're going to go buy a franchise, even if you've worked in a franchise organization, you're going to need to ask the right questions, and asking the right questions is the most critical part of the process. Validation is, and I think most consultants would agree, validation is the most critical part of the process, but validation done right. You're not going to let the brand dictate who you're going to talk to. Because then they're going to skew it in their direction. So when I represent a candidate, it's my job to make sure they're getting clarity on what they're buying. And if I'm getting only one side of the story, they're not going to get clarity on what they're buying. So I need to make sure that they're asking all the right questions to the right people. And that's how you get the information. You're not going to get, and you could go online and see if you like the marketing, but again, that's your opinion. You want to hear from the franchisees. You want to know what they're great at. They're going to tell you they're terrible at accounting. They mess up my P&L every month. Or they're amazing at marketing. I don't have to do anything, and they're driving traffic every month, right? Like, you're going to hear those things in validation. And so that's a critical component, the most critical.
Yeah, I see. Uh, you mentioned in our pre-call that you built some simple AI tool. Well, maybe not simple. Well, maybe it's not simple anymore. But you built some AI tool which helps you identify if like which like franchise is good for this candidate, or which segment is good for this candidate. Could you tell us a bit more about what you built and how it works, what it does?
Yeah, it started out really small. I think I was slightly ahead of the curve with Chat GPT. When it came out, and I was using it extensively. As a matter of fact, I left corporate partly because I made a presentation about Chat GPT and how it could change our organization, and everyone looked at me with this blank stare. And I asked them, "How many of you are using Chat GPT every day?" And I thought everyone would raise their hand. And nobody raised their hand. And my CEO said to me, "Are you using it every day?" And I said, "Yeah, I use it every day. I write all my process documents through it." And I think at that point I realized, this isn't an organization I want to work for any longer. But also that I had something. I really understood the technology and how it could be used, and it was kind of ahead of the curve. So lo and behold, I found this thing called Claude. And when I was working for FranChoice, they were still using ChatGPT, and they were still dabbling in how to kind of create models and use agents. And what I realized is the one thing that I need assistance with, and that I have data for, that I could punch into this AI machine, would be information about franchisees and their success, right? And what they look like. So when I have a candidate that looks very similar to a previous candidate that bought a franchise, and now they're in the top 25% or the top quartile of that franchise, there's a pretty good indication that might be a good match, right? That might be a really good match. That doesn't happen in franchise consulting. Now, it might happen up here in their brains, but do they have the data that they can punch in to this machine that will spit out, the franchise businesses and brands that are a best fit for this candidate? And that's what I built. So ultimately, now what I can do is take all my previous history with all franchisees that I've ever worked with, all the information I have. Sometimes it's robust, sometimes it is not. And I put that into Claude, into my model. And what it does for me is it'll spit out the brands and the persona that are best fit. So when candidates come to me, I'm not just guessing. I'm not doing it based on how much money they can invest, because I don't think that's right either. I really want to tell them what is going to be the best fit for them based on the data. And when the data points tell me that this candidate fits another candidate, again, that was in the top quartile of this brand for 10 years and got out and sold, I know that that's probably going to be a good fit. Now, there's other things that go into it, obviously, but from a basic level, that's what this model does. And so I just keep dumping data into it. I keep dumping more data into it, and it gets better. And that's the thing that I find really fascinating is that, if you're not doing this now, I hope you have spreadsheets, right? With all the data, because that's where it gets good. That's where the rubber really meets the road, at least for the model that I built for 258 Motivate. And, it can absolutely be, this is what I use. I don't, other people may use some other AI models, but I can tell you that, I think everyone should be considering this because it's absolutely helpful. I'm very transparent about the fact that I use this with candidates. They need to know that I do this. It's not just an instinctual thing, but there is instinct and then there is data. And I use those two things collectively to come up with the best brand fit. And I think that's the future of franchise consulting. I really do. That's my opinion, but I think that franchise consulting and the franchise industry in general, in terms of sales, needs a full overhaul. And they need to be more innovative. We need to be more innovative, and I'm trying to do that for my candidates. So that's kind of where I stand on it. But it's been really fun. And again, I started with very little knowledge. I mean, I might have been ahead of the curve, but these things can be learned online. And if they can't, there's people out there that can help you with this. And once you've built the model, it runs on its own. And it really runs on its own. So.
Yeah, for sure. And but how do you compare with one person to another? So how do you compare this candidate with
Yep.
previous people you filled into
Good.
the model? Do you have
Yeah,
some
good question. I mean,
profile?
I take everything. I mean, it's like a dating app, kind of. I I take all of the information I mean, it's kind of a good analogy. I take all the information, age, I take previous work history, I take all of the things that they tell me during the interview process. So I go through a lengthy consultation. It's like an hour and a half or 2 hours. I still do that because I need all the information I can get that I can then put into my data set and put it into my machine. And so everything, psychographics, demographics, everything that I can think of. And again, I ask all the right questions and I ask the hard questions, right? So once I get all of that information, what are you good at? What don't you like to do? What are your hobbies? How much time do you want to spend in this franchise? Is your significant other going to be involved? Do you have kids? I mean, it runs the gamut. Once I have all that information and I can put it into my machine, then it will spit out other profiles that are similar with their franchise of choice. So if you bought a franchise, 5 years ago and you're doing great, you're humming along, and I know that, and I've updated your profile, then it will match you with that person. And then I will look at what we recommended for that person based on, their consultation. And I can tell you what brands will be most likely a best fit. And, I'd like to say it's 100% accurate. It's pretty close. I mean, I hardly get brands where I think, why would it match me with this person or this brand? I mean, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about Rick in Des Moines, Iowa. That's right. This is a really good match, and it'll pull him up. So it works really well. But again, you've got to still use instinct in this job. But I think any kind of data point that you can get is really, really important. So I still do the whole consultation. But to your point, like you need age, height, and weight. You need all of it. And once you have all of it, it all matters. Really, it all matters too. I mean, there are things that people probably wouldn't think matter, and they do. Like the more data you have on someone, the better off you're going to be matching them with the appropriate brand.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But you you match one person to another, and then you know that that other guy has purchased like certain franchise. So do you match your candidate to a franchise segment or to a particular business?
So
How does
that's
it
where
work for
it's
you?
that's kind of where it starts. But I can drill all the way down to the specific businesses. So it's interesting because, you know, a brand that was really big 5 years ago, if it matches you
Yeah,
with a brand that's been around for 5 years or 10 years, then that brand typically doesn't have territory availability. Or, you know, sometimes people specifically tell me they want something emerging, and I love emerging brands. I would much rather work with a brand that's got, you know, 2 units, than a brand that's got, you know, 600 units. I
yeah,
love emerging brands. It's more fun, but it also, there's more opportunity. You know, there's a lot more opportunity, and so I think for people interested in franchising, there's a lot of cool brands out there, and a lot of the times, so what happens is, if someone's been in the business 5 years, then I would match them with the industry segment. That's to answer your question. If somebody's been in window washing, which I don't know why I use that as an example because I don't think it's a great business, but um, for various reasons, just because I wouldn't want it. But so yeah, somebody, you know, somebody's been in window washing for 5 years and they're crushing it, and this person's profile happens to match that person to a T, then that might be a segment that we would investigate. And so there's still work to be done, but, you know, if it's a perfect match, it's close to 98%, then you can literally take those brands if they're, you know, less than 3 years old, and you could say, this gentleman in Des Moines, Iowa, matched with these brands, you know, and I don't give names, but, and then I tell them the data points that we're using to match him with this person in Des Moines, Iowa. When you tell them the data points and they're like, oh, that sounds like me, right? Then you say, okay, these are the brands, and this is the brand that they chose, you know, and I'm not skewing them. I'm just telling them what I'm reading from the data points. And so that gives people, I mean, it definitely helps people reflect. It also helps people to make decisions. I mean, because I think in franchise consulting, eliminating brands is just as important as finding the one that works. And I tell my candidates, when you land on a brand, or we land on a brand together and you want to investigate that brand, find every way to say no. And that sounds crazy from a franchise consulting perspective, but I want them to poke as many holes in the brand as they can so they can get to a point where they're about ready to make a decision and say no. Why do I do it that way? Because I want them to be that confident when they say yes. You know, because
hmm
otherwise it's not going to otherwise it's not going to work. So we get there a lot faster at 258 Motivate because of our data sets. You know, and I feel very lucky that I've kept good records all my career. I've got a lot of good information. So yeah, and I have, you know, again, I have two partners that I work with who also have been in franchising for a really long time. And so we combined our data to make this happen. And so it does take a lot of data, but I can tell you these algorithms that we create and these agents that are doing the work, it's not hard. It really isn't as difficult as people think it's going to be. So I don't want to give away all the secrets, but I actually think everyone should use it. I really do. I mean, I don't, I think people would be better off. I think businesses would be more successful, and I think franchisees would be happier, you know?
yeah, yeah, for sure. And when you choose a business segment, how would you compare it to two or three or five different franchises? How would you choose the perfect?
The perfect business segment.
Not the business segment, the perfect business within the sales segment. Like
Oh, great question. Yeah.
window washing. So
Yeah.
there are like 10 different
Right.
window washing
Yeah.
cases over there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, franchising is funny. It's kind of, you know, I don't even know if this is politically correct, but it's kind of like an old boys club. It's like being at the country club. It's this kind of, it's kind of this group of people who have been around a long time. They're kind of long in the tooth. And they've been in franchising for 25 years, and they've been a franchise salesperson all their career. Well, they know the brands that are good and bad. They even know the franchise salespeople that are good and bad. And you can gather a lot of this information. So I know the brands and the people and the leadership at brands that are good. I know those that aren't so good. And so I just keep my candidates away from the brands that I don't think are good. And again, that's instinct and knowledge. Another reason why people, if you're going to go buy a franchise, use a consultant. I don't care if it's me or somebody else. It's free. My services are free. So you do not pay me anything to get a consultation, to get an understanding of what's going to be a best fit for you. No consultant should be charging you. So the reason that you use one is for that knowledge that they have. And so a good franchise consultant has a big network of people that they know and that they reach out to, that they talk to. So it becomes a little bit more difficult when we're talking about emerging brands. And so typically, if someone tells me that they're interested, they're not they're risk averse, then we're going to go to a brand that's got a number of units, right? We're going to go to something that's consistent. If they say, let's go for it, I'm really interested in something that's emerging, then we're going to find that great emerging brand that's got leadership that either I know already because they're coming from a different brand, or I've done the research on that brand. As a matter of fact, I recently talked to a gentleman, and I'm not going to tell you the brand, but it's a poke brand, and here in the States, and he doesn't come from franchising, and they hired a CEO from the franchise industry, and it worked terribly. Like, he had to fire this person. It was really hard to kind of detach from her. So there are really great people that are realizing not everyone in franchising is great. And just because you come from a franchise doesn't mean you understand it. So, this gentleman hired everybody that was in technology. Why did he do that? Because he can offshore so much of the other work now. And that's what a lot of franchise brands are doing. So it's really keeping your ear to the pipeline, having an understanding of who's doing great work and who's not, what brands are trending and what's not. And then just, really having that instinct, but also that knowledge and using the data set. So it's cool because I have kind of three types of people I can reach out to. My agent, my AI agent, I can reach out to my network, and I can reach out, I can reach out to other franchisees. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. Why is there no? Well, when I was checking online on the industry, I found all these resources like Gator and so on and so forth. On each of them, like for example, me being a potential franchisee, I feel myself being a product of this of these platforms. Why is there no like transparent, clear marketplace or some place where me as a potential franchisee can come over, do my own analysis and do this matchmaking with potential franchises? Why is there no such product on the market?
I'm going to be totally blunt about this. Nobody talks about it. It's because the job of the franchise consultant is now obsolete, and that's where it's headed. Like, this is, I can't reiterate enough that this industry is so primed for either complete annihilation or a complete reframe. I'm to use your podcast. I mean, it is, because if you had something like that, which I think that's exactly really what I'm trying to build, right? And the reason why I don't make it public is because it's my data and my candidates' data that I can't share. But if you had a platform like that, you no longer need me as a consultant. So it's like this secret thing. Yeah, my knowledge is important. That's really critical. But if you could go online and use my data to match yourself with a great franchise brand, and it gave you 3 or 4 choices, just like a franchise consultant is going to do, which I also totally disagree with. They give you 3 brands typically. That's what they're told to provide you. That's it. They do that for a reason. But I think I never start with 3. I'm always giving people 5 brands. I mean, if you could go online and do that, now you don't need a consultant to walk you through the process necessarily, right? Until you get to validation. The only benefit to using a consultant, if you had a platform kind of like the one you're describing, would be because they have a network of people that they can reach out to see about leadership and things like that. But to do your initial research, it's crap online. There's nothing out there that's good. All of it really is to generate. It's to generate leads for consultants, because consultants are willing to pay, upwards of $100 for a lead. So that's really what those platforms do. They don't help the consumer. They help the franchise consultant. Their business is on their own. And so all this money that goes into franchising and franchise consulting and franchise sales, it's not really, there's been nothing built to really help the consumer. that I know of. And clearly you've done some of your research too. I don't know anything out there that's being built just to help the consumer. I mean, and to be honest, like, wouldn't you pay $25 to use it once? I mean, it'd be worth it, right? Totally worth it. So yeah, I think that's something that's going to emerge. I think that some of the consultants who are in the younger age demographic, which isn't me, but some of them that are finding it to be very old school. And it's just kind of, it's like this secret society of people that don't want to tell you that most of what they do is bullshit. And and I hope it's okay if I use that term. It's the truth. They're not being wholly honest about it, and they want to sell you franchise businesses. That's the name of the game. So closing is the name of the game, and selling is the name of the game. And it doesn't matter if you sell a franchise to somebody and they fail, because it's not any of your business after that. And so that to me is wrong. That to me is not the way that I could ever run my life. So I think that there's opportunity to exactly what you're saying. I mean, how frustrating is it for you to go online and say, here's all my information, right? I put it into a form that I know is going to go to a franchise consultant, but here's all my information. Tell me what you think I'd be a great match for. What's emerging? What's trending? What's existing? Like, give me all that stuff and let me make a decision on who I want to validate with. Maybe that's when I use a consultant. I call the consultant and say, okay, I found these brands. What do you think? Right? The problem is the consultant's going to want to know how you got there, right? How did you get to these brands? Let's use my process. My process is tried and true. It's been around for 25 years, and it's, la da 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 da, and it's crap. They don't have a tried and true process that's good for the consumer. It's good for the consultant because it helps them close, but it's not good for the consumer. And I mean, I'll probably get destroyed online for saying that, but it is the truth. And anybody worth their salt would stand up and say that. They all do it the same way, and it's wrong. That's what I'll say. I think it's wrong.
Yeah. Look, in my opinion, it feels like one of the biggest lies of the industry is that it's cost free for the franchisee. It doesn't cost franchisee anything. Actually, franchisee pays for everything. So even for the consultant, because in the end of the day, consultant is being paid by the franchisor, but franchisee is buying the franchise. It's part of the cost.
It's baked in, right? Exactly. I mean, it's again one of those things that, like, if you've got any wits about you, yeah, I'm free, right? I'm not free. I get paid for every brand that I sell. I'm not free.
Yep.
And they bake those costs either into royalties or somewhere, marketing fund. It's there somewhere. You're going to pay for it. And franchisees pay for everything, and it's the truth. Like, one of the things I would tell anybody buying a franchise is, whatever your budget is, just double it. Double it, because that's what you're going to need, right? It's not, they're going to tell you, you can, margins should be here, and depending on where you live, so much of this is variable. And so you're right. You're going to pay for it. Franchisees pay for everything, and that's the truth. This business is, one of the other things that people don't talk a lot about is, buying one unit of something is totally worthless, I think. I mean, you could start with one unit to understand the business, but don't think you're going to make any money with one unit, because you're not. Because franchising, it's all done at scale. You need to scale a business in order to make money. You have to have multiple units in order to make good money. You're not going to buy one and get rich. So people who think that, it's not true. It's misinformation. And it's funny. I love talking about brands, and one that I talk about a lot, but I'm not going to name it. Again, it's a cookie brand that sells cookies. You might know which one I'm talking about. Like the brands like that people bought 16 units of, that is not going to be around for much longer. I can't imagine. It's a novelty. It's cool for a week. People like it for a week, and then that's it. And so anytime, a franchise consultant is suggesting a novel brand that's new and very emerging and cool, it's one to avoid, unless that it's got some legs. And typically food brands don't have legs like that anymore because of all the, the food truck culture. And so you just have to be very careful. And I think there is still value using consultant, because because I know more about franchising than you do, but I agree with you that there needs to be some platform or something done about the early research that that the consumer does, so that their information isn't always being sent over to a franchise consultant as a lead. It's just, and then every industry does it, but it's unfortunate. Senior home care is an industry where they do the same thing, right? You want to go look up home care for your parent? Well, you're going to end up becoming somebody's lead, right? And so everybody does it. I don't think it's right. I think as it relates to buying a product like a franchise that's going to be more expensive than any car you've ever purchased, you can do research on a car and find out what car would be a best fit for you, right? And you can know the exact price of that car. When it comes to franchising, it's more expensive. You'd think you'd have more ability to do that for yourself, and it just doesn't exist. You're right. You're right. So that was a long-winded
Yeah.
answer, but I love that conversation because I think that's where, again, that's really the big conversation that needs to be had in franchising and franchise consulting is, how do we help the consumer? Like, it's not about that bottom line. I mean, I just, it's not about closing. It's about how do we help the person that came to us to begin with? So, yeah.
Well, what are the problems do franchisees have when they start the business? Besides, I don't know, choosing the right segment, choosing the right business, comparing them with each other. What else? What else can be automated and done on the initial step?
Yeah, so I'll tell you about just kind of my experience as a franchisee. I think that's really important because,
Yeah, yeah,
I have two businesses. One's in an industry that's been around for a really long time, and it's not a tech savvy industry, and there's not a lot of innovation being done in this industry. And so when I was looking at things like HubSpot, a CRM like HubSpot, or Pipedrive, I wanted something that was specific to this business. There's got to be somebody out there that's built a CRM platform that does everything I need it to do, right? This industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Well, it didn't exist. It exists now, but it's not good. And so one of the things franchisees have to deal with is understanding their operations. They have to understand their operations from start to finish before they can invest in technology and a tech stack. You have to. So again, you talk about reframing things. You can't purchase a seat in HubSpot and think that that's going to be right for your business from start to finish, unless you wholly understand what your operations look like from start to finish. And do you know how long that takes when you buy a business? You probably do. A long time. It takes a year. I mean, if you're lucky, it's 6 months, but you've got to learn, you've got to fail, you've got to figure it all out. And so for that first year, you don't have a tech stack. You don't have a marketing system. You might be using something. And I have a friend, very smart, who used spreadsheets because he knew this. He knew that he would need all the information, but he wasn't going to invest in a tech stack and start here when he knew he wasn't sure where he was going to be 6 months from now. And so one of the problems franchisees have is taking recommendations from the franchise on what they should use for their operation. And I'm going to say that again because it's really important. Taking recommendations from the franchise on what types of software and platforms they should use, and taking that recommendation as the holy grail, because it's different for everyone. Because I had mentioned it earlier, I'm really good at marketing. Okay, great. Well, I don't need HubSpot because I understand how that all works. I can do that. So I don't need HubSpot. HubSpot's really great for somebody who doesn't know how to do marketing, right? And it's expensive because of it. So what do I need? Well, I need to figure that out. And so a lot of franchisees, they don't think that way because they want to get up and running as quickly as possible. But that's a mistake. I think that unless you have a franchisee that is so good and they've totally crushed systems, which you'll hear about a lot. There's very few of them that have. If their systems are so good and they can tell you your ROI on that system and show you everything you need to see, then maybe you take their recommendation, but I'd still do my homework. I mean, everything from billing to payroll, right? To again, CRM and marketing, you really need to understand your business. And so in my business, we do recruiting, and we also we do sales. So we've got kind of two things. We recruit employees at a rapid pace and we try and sell at a rapid pace. It's pretty equally the same. We put in the same effort on both ends. Whereas a lot of businesses hire one or two people, we are always hiring, always a 24-hour hiring cycle. And so I needed a CRM that could do both. Should be pretty easy to figure that out, right? Like, let's do a CRM that captures my pipeline for recruiting and captures my pipeline for selling. Well, I had to build it. And this industry's been around for 100 years. I had to build this CRM, and I built it in Pipedrive with the help of a friend of mine. And then we connected everything else to it. Make.com. We connected, everything connects. Sales message, everything connects to Pipedrive. And even sales message, like that's something handpicked by me because I liked the platform. I understood what it did. I know that I could send text videos for free through that platform. So I was able to integrate that into Pipedrive. Everything that I needed is different from every other franchisee. No one uses my system. And even my friend who I mentioned who had spreadsheets, like he uses a completely different, he uses a completely different CRM and a completely different system, and it works for him. It does basically the same thing that mine does. But this is something that franchisees are not prepared for. And it's something that nobody talks about. They just say, oh, we'll just use what the franchise prescribes. That might be good at the beginning, but don't get into any long-term contracts because it's going to change for you. And you're going to find that there's better options out there, or you're going to dream up. And this is what I did. What would work best for me? Like, what do I need to make this business run so I don't pull my hair out? And that is, a system built specifically for the way that I operate the business. And that never comes up in franchising. And again, I want to reiterate, some brands will tell you that their systems are great, but you got to be able to ask the right questions. What does that mean? Systems are great. Systems are, I need to know what that means specifically. Does it make it easier for me? And how does it make it easier? So at the end of the day, franchise businesses are complicated. They're hard. And they need to be simplified. And that's what kind of how you need to think about your business when you're starting it. How can I make it as easy as possible? Because the more complicated you make it, the worse it's going to be.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. But on the other hand, it's probably hard to build like software that's a good fit for everyone. So it really depends on everybody's need, like at this point of time, and like for this specific business. So,
yeah, I think so. I mean, I think like for this business, you could easily, and this person that I worked with on Pipedrive, you could easily take a 30,000 foot view and say, what are the things that you have to have in a CRM for this industry and build it? And it just seems like people just aren't thinking that way. So, and there's lots of industries like that. It's amazing to me how much business there is, how much business opportunity there is out there. I mean, we just talked about two different industries, franchise consulting, and then I'm talking about senior home care, two industries where they're ripe for some innovation. People are trying, but they're just not getting it right. So, yeah. So it's time for you and I to start a business.
Sure. That's something we'll discuss.
Yeah. So
coming down to another interesting question of this huge FDD document, how hard is it to read it, and what do you typically read there, and what information do you try to extract from this FDD? And because it's so much regulated on one hand, but on the other hand, it has so much hidden in the document,
and it can be manipulated. I mean, the thing about math is that like averages. I'm not good at math, and so I'm always concerned when I see numbers because I want to know how you got to these numbers, right? And formulas can be manipulated to make things look a lot better than they are. And so franchise consultants always talk about item 19, and it's the disclosure of your revenue. And it honestly, it's a single number that can be manipulated to make the franchise look a lot better than it is. If you don't read the fine print in a 235-page document, the real fine print that says, we pulled out the bottom quartile of our franchises and the top, we're giving you an average. There's so many things that are wrong with the FDD. And one of the things I will say is that that's another reason why people hold on so tightly to this franchise consulting process. The FDD. Well, everybody now has a summarize button in their browser that summarizes documents, most likely, I hope you do, that'll summarize a document and pull out the things that are most important. And if you teach it right, you can even tell the agent to find things that are inaccurate or find things that seem like they could be inaccurate, right? And it'll show you in the FDD areas where you need to do further exploration. Do not read an FDD from top to bottom. It's a really important document that you should understand, but you don't need a franchise consultant to take you through it. They're going to hand it off to you. They typically won't take you through it. They're going to tell you to read it. And then they're going to say, did you read the FDD? Because you have to sign that you received it. That's really important to think about. You're signing just that you received this document. You're binded to the fact that they gave you all the information that you needed to make a good decision. Why? Right? Why? And I know it's legal. Obviously, there's been lawsuits about these types of things, but in a perfect world, I shouldn't need to do that, really. It should be transparent. I should be able to, if you're still selling franchise businesses and territories, then you should be really proud of what you've accomplished and you should show me your numbers, period. And I want to know. And I should be able to ask all the questions that I need to ask. Otherwise, what are you hiding? Right? And that's why I tell my candidates, I want you to get to a place where you can say no, right? And if the FDD doesn't seem correct or you have questions that aren't being answered, then you know they're hiding something, then you just pass. I mean, not pass. The FDD is another thing that we use as consultants. I don't use, I say we because I'm included in that pool to frighten candidates into thinking that I have the answers, or I know what I'm doing. Just follow my process. The FDD can be summarized. Use AI. Go into Claude, have it summarize the most important pieces for you, have it find those areas that don't seem correct or seem incorrect, and the areas that you need to further explore to get a solid and clear answer on this franchise brand. You don't need to read the whole thing. I mean, it's just a bunch of it's a bunch of gibberish, really, for most people. It's going to put you to sleep. So I highly recommend finding or creating an agent online that can do that for you if you're in the midst of going through FDDs. I don't do that for my candidates, but I tell them exactly what I just told you. Don't read the whole thing, but find areas, and if they need help, I'll help them along. But you can pop that right into. My wife uses ChatGPT. She, and she's a stay-at-home mom, home engineer. She was a teacher, so she's not like super big on technology, but she uses it. And so like anybody can do this. Don't read the FDD. The FDD is it's a legal document that just is, it's not always accurate. It's not always true. So unfortunately, it's not always true.
And probably do not go to attorney and do not pay them $3,000
for. No way. No way. I mean, no way. I hate to say, I haven't used an attorney for anything at all, and luckily I haven't run into any legal problems, but I don't need an attorney. I don't need an attorney. I have an agent who is my attorney. Like I don't, they can do, an agent online can do the exact same things that an attorney does and do it faster with more data. So if people tell you that AI is not a valid use of it won't work in consulting, it's not true because I'm using it to make it work. So yeah.
Looking into the future, where do you think this industry will be in like 5 years' time? Because like everything is changing nowadays and it's changing quite rapidly. And this industry being cold, that doesn't mean that it should not be changed. It will change, it's certain.
My hope is that it's less than 5 years. I've got to think that it's going to take somebody who has a lot of influence. I think it's like politics in franchise consulting. The big politicians are the ones who get the most respect, but they also owe people a lot of favors. And it's just I scratch your back, you scratch mine, leaving the consumer out of that scratching of the back, because. Like I said, it's just kind of an old industry that needs a refresh. Somebody with influence is going to have to stand up and say, okay, enough's enough. This is BS. The things that you're using, the tools that you're using are so old and outdated. The training that you're providing consultants was used 25 years ago and it's not tried and true anymore. People are smarter than this. It's just it's so to me. I think that franchise consultants are further behind than even some of their consumers. I work with really smart people who some of them have built these machines. Some of them have built these agents and they understand how it all works. So I think in 5 years, what's going to happen is you're going to see some of the younger consultants, their business is taking off. I have a feeling there's going to be new franchise networks popping up frequently, which there already are, that are more diverse, that are more open-minded, and that have a better pool of consultants that really understand what today's franchisee is looking for. Um, they're not necessarily looking for window washing, passive income, types of opportunities, because again, those don't exist. So I think that's what you're gonna see is somebody with influence standing up and saying enough's enough. I'm gonna start my own franchise network, and here's how we're gonna do things. It's completely different, and they're gonna give away a lot of the secrets of the industry. I already have today given away a lot of the secrets, but I don't. To me, they're not secrets. These are things that people should know. Um, you know, a franchise consultant might feel like your best friend, but at the end of the day, all they care about, and they can argue this, all they care about is you buying a franchise. That's all they care
Yep.
about. And I think part of the reason why I added marketing on as a department in our organization was because of that. When we sell a franchise, one of the things I tell my candidates is that you get a free consultation with our team about what your first year marketing plans should look like for this industry and this business. Now, that's something no franchise can, and there's no guarantees, right? Again, this is all risk, but at least I'm following up on what I believe to be true, right? Like I know that this is a great brand for you. You can do this work. Now let me help you market that business in the first year. People realize that there's real value in that. There's real value in that because now I'm on board with it. I want you to win, I wonder how many franchise consultants follow up with the people that they sold franchises to within the first 6 months to see how they're doing. I bet you very few. Maybe zero. I mean, there are out there, people are going to say, I do it, Matt, I do it. There aren't very many because those first 6 months are hard. And when you call a franchisee who you sold a franchise to in month 3, they're going to hate you because it's hard. It's hard work. But if you've helped them along and you've given them some ideas on how to market their business and you've done a great job of matching them through data, instinct, and your network, then, you're good to go. You're good to go. So that's what I see really changing is that connection to the success of the business in year 1. So let's say we were going to change everything about franchise consulting and franchising. That's what would change. I am now bought into that first year of your business in a way that's we've never been bought in before. So if I'm on the franchise sales side at Dave's Hot Chicken, guess what? My entire bonus is based on how our franchisees do year 1, year 3, and year 5. That's how I get paid. So if I sell somebody a business and they don't know how to run it, that's on me also, not just on them. And right now, all of the negativity about franchising falls on the franchisee. It's because you're not working hard enough. It's because you're not following the systems. It's because, well, guess what? It might be because it's a shitty match. Pardon my French. It's not a good match, right? It's not a good match. And so it all starts with that. How do we get consultants aligned with the outcomes, not with the sign the paperwork and I'm done. So I think that's the biggest change that needs to happen. And from a technology perspective, yeah, everything needs to change. Everyone's process needs to include some data points that help them make a better decision.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Awesome. Thanks a lot for great discussion. And
Thank you so much. It was cool. I loved your questions, and it's always great talking to you. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, because these questions, you're the first person probably where I have these direct answers.
Well, it might get me in trouble, but it's just it's really how I feel. And I don't want it to be a soapbox, but it's the truth. And I think people who really listen to what I'm saying would agree that like there's a disconnect here and it needs to be solved for. And you mentioned it. I mean, you're a consumer who has looked at franchise businesses and you can't get what you want out of it. And before you know it, you got 8 consultants calling you and it's really unfortunate. So yeah, I think that there needs to be more transparency. There needs to be more consumer involvement as opposed to just the consultant and the franchisor. And so I think those two things don't always go hand in hand, and I think you need to have the consumer involved. So yeah, but thank you again.
For sure.
It's been really fun. I love talking franchising with you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for coming, and
You got
have a
it.
great one.
You too. Take care.